Most people think of UFOs, they think of Roswell, Nevada desert. They really rarely ever think about, if ever, East Tennessee. But the federal government has been watching this stretch of Appalachia since about 1950, not because of folklore, because what's circling over Oak Ridge, the most classified piece of real estate in the Cold War era. October 23rd, 1950, AEC officers, Air Force radar, a Geiger counter spike for alpha and beta particles. The FBI documented, and then the file just closes. 31 years later, 12 miles from that same perimeter, a man went fishing on the Clinch River and didn't come back the same. 2 cases, same corner of Tennessee, both documented but ignored. Tonight, we're going to talk about those and some other stuff as we hit East Tennessee magical journey style. I want to bring tonight, ladies and gentlemen, back my guest from last week, and we are going to talk about all of this together with Michael. Hey,
Hello.
my friend.
Oh, sorry, you caught me making my fire real quick.
That's
We're
okay.
good.
That's okay. So, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Today was certainly an experience, with what I found. I'll bring that up and show everybody. Been doing well. We've made some progress on the chicken coop. We've been getting things together out here, just going on along this magical journey every day we all take part in. So yeah, other than that, man, just got a new job. I
Oh,
said,
wow.
well, yeah, I don't want to celebrate till the first day of work, but well, I'm in, but I'm just not there yet. You know what I mean?
Right,
I'm
right.
sorry, my mom. she, I told her I have it, but I haven't worked the first day. So yeah, we're running through the process. I'll be running like tow motors, front end loaders, mini X's. I said, yeah, you can pay me to do that. I'll do it all day. So
Right.
not today, but
Good deal. So, when you explore the area quite a bit through where you're at,
mhm.
um, what are some things you look for? Where are some areas that you go to there?
Well, okay, and this is touching on today. I think the first thing is when you go out anywhere, especially into like a natural forest area, anywhere, you first off, you want to take time to acclimate, and you want to get, you want to get used to your surroundings. There's a period of time that I find where when I walk out anywhere and I'm on a hike, at some point everything becomes a little bit more vivid. It's almost greener. It's like I settle in. It's almost as if like the great aura created by the trees and the electromagnet, your body, you just settle in, right? So when you go looking for stuff and you're trying to find stuff, really the act of looking so much can actually hinder your progress, right? So like
Right.
it's really just about getting out there, settling into your surroundings, and then kind of turning on the imagination. Let your eyes wander. If if you practice more just letting your eyes settle where they will, you'll find stuff all the time. If you go out and stress out
Right.
about trying to find it, well, then you're just kind of, you know you're trying too hard. So just go out, find stuff, see what it means to you. I like bugs, I like leaves, I like trees. You might like something different. You might like whatever's out there. So it's really just getting into your own little zone.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. This area too is very much um, Central Tennessee is very much it's very eclectic when it comes to the flora and fauna. The wildlife here can be kind of interesting. So there's just a lot of things to be able to draw on, and then there's the fact that there's so much history here. I mean, everything from early man all the way up to Civil War and beyond. So there is a lot to explore in this little area of ours. Um, when when you get into East Tennessee and those areas, though, you've got the mountains, you've got lots of water. This area is so water feature heavy, and I think that is one of the things too that works in our favor a lot of times. So you have 3 separate areas, East Tennessee, Central Tennessee, and West Tennessee, with completely different landscapes, completely different feels, and, where you have we're in the kind of a basin area, and there's the mountains in East Tennessee. West Tennessee is kind of flat, um, not necessarily uh, as eclectic as far as what am I looking for here? The landscape itself is just kinda, it's there. In very different areas. The climates can be very different also. So I think it's very interesting that we have such diversity um, throughout the
I
state.
mean, it can be 70 degrees out in the plains, but on the plateau it's snowing.
Yeah,
And
right.
the Appalachians are a part of the old mountain ranges, from where the continents separated from so long ago. That's the same mountain range that you find along, through Europe. So Tennessee alone, if you, you know, it's when you take it by border, by state, when you put lines around it, you kind of do have a box that you can then analyze, and you can go state by state. But without lines, the whole area, the whole terrain, everything, it's just there's so much evidence of prior civilizations, prior people who have lived here, maybe even cataclysmic events. And again, it goes back to just if you go out anywhere, you have no idea what you're walking on top of, what you're walking around. You have no idea what you'll find, what might be exposed. It's all about just getting out there, connecting with it in a sense. So yeah, I love Tennessee, and I've been around the Midwest, and I've seen like completely different environments and the diversity just in the foothills of the Appalachians
Mhm.
and the wide openness of the fields. And then, of course, you have the rivers and all the flora and fauna that like literal species that only live in the creeks versus species that only live in your rivers. There's just so much to talk about. You could go on all day, right? It's, it's so much out there that people just don't go experience anymore.
Right. And, when you get into, especially like you said, the foothills and then in the mountains, which the mountains are absolutely amazing. Uh, you see a lot of things. The park, the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, reintroduced elk into the park, which is really neat. A bit smaller than the elk that you're familiar with in Oregon and Washington State,
Mhm.
but still very just majestic creatures. Uh, the Once you get into areas like Oak Ridge, which I was discussing at the opening of the show, uh, you get into more of the weird vibe is the best way to describe it. I mean, there's a lot of craziness there in that area. And a lot of there've been reported sightings of all kinds of cryptids and all kinds of stuff going on there in that area. And of course, during the Cold War, it literally Oak Ridge popped up as like just nothing. It started out as nothing. They called it the secret city. Um, so there's a lot of stories of government work there and a lot of watching the
A lot
chat
of
bubble.
unknowns, right? A lot of like there's just you don't have to know so much just to understand, and
Right,
knowing too much can kind of get in the way of understanding sometimes. You know that there's something there, you don't know about it. So what do you understand about that? What's the history of, I don't know, secret facilities anywhere, It's I think when you start talking about things like that, especially things that you know that they don't want you to know, it's at the end of the day, it's all about the information, right? So when you're talking about national security, what is information? Information can be detrimental, you know?
Right.
And if you're dealing with an institute um, that is of national importance, then there's just, what do you say about it? Where do you go about it? Where's the tripwires at? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
is there a giant particle collider? Are we doing DARPA programs? Are we manipulating the weather? Absolutely, all these things. But at Oak Ridge, I don't know. You know, I'm not gonna like,
Right. Right. Well, and
because
there's all yeah, there's all kinds of rumors about the stuff at Oak Ridge. Sometimes more rumor than we care to talk about. Again, the collider, the particle collider is one of the speculations for that area. Yeah. Um, I do want to give a shout out to our mod Pam. Today is her birthday, guys. So y'all help her celebrate that today in the chat. Enjoy some fun time with her while
happy birthday, Pam.
we're doing this tonight. The overall, too, again, when it comes to the history all through that area, Harriman going back toward our area, there's just vast amounts of space that is full of uh, indigenous history. Obviously, there's not many places you can go to that doesn't have some type of history connected to the Civil War, and and even when you get into the mountain areas, we're talking colonial history and so forth. The Scottish and Irish communities that grew up in those areas that came to those areas. Uh, you have the Ogles, the Calhouns. There were so many different families that helped to build up those areas, and uh, all of them came from indentured servanthood and so forth. So this area is quite the spectacle when it comes to the history of it and the deep dives that you can do into the history. Again, you mentioned the mountains being part of the same chain that goes through Europe, um, and that in itself this is very ancient ground that we're talking about here. And people
So
think, yeah.
when you talk about that specifically, settlers coming in, and what you're talking about, any kind of culture that comes in on top of another culture,
Mhm.
you can find the evidence everywhere. I didn't go for it today. I will make a return out to my favorite little spot and take a video of this tree I found, right? So it's downstream again from the cellars, and it's in this little spot down the stream. You'll find places where trees haven't been touched, or it's just a little woodland area, and it's a little pocket that's just remained untouched, right? So I found this sycamore tree that when I saw it at first, I was kind of like, it was magnificent. It was literally like it's three trunks, all of which are big enough for me to barely fit my hands around, right?
Wow.
And so it's what you have is you have three trunks that all come out in three different directions from the ground from this base, and each of these trunks is big around, like I said, like I can hug. And I got to looking at this tree and just reading. I read the Secret Life of Trees. Do you know the book? I believe it's The Secret Life of Trees. Will you check that for me? Make sure I'm right on that. But basically, one thing he talks about is Peter Wolleben, I think his name is. He goes through and finds these old stumps that are thousands of years old. He thought they were boulders, but they found out that they were stumps.
Oh
So
wow.
I've remembered that. So I find this tree that is like got three shoots, and at the base I realize it's all one trunk. And so each of these three shoots has to be, who knows, decades, possibly over 100 years old at least. When did we come through and log, the mountains in the areas? When did they come through? The Secret Life of Trees by Colin Tudge. I'm not sure who Peter Wolleben is. Yeah, Secret Life of Trees, Colin Tudge. But that just goes to show, it's like you can have arms of a tree that are 100 years old, but if you go and you look, the loggers came through and cut the trees down at the base.
Yeah.
And a lot of those stumps survived. And the reason why they survived is because okay. All right. Thank you. The reason why they survived is because plants and trees are social creatures. If you cut down a tree, the other trees will actually give it nutrients and help it. So you can have stumps. You can have trees that have been cut down no matter, you don't know how many times. A stump could be over 1,000 years old itself. And it's just itself a testament. I'll correct myself. Peter Wolleben, The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel and How They Communicate, Discoveries from a Secret World. The Hidden Life of Trees. It's a wonderful book. Wonderful read. But it just goes to show, everything's connected. Everything regrows. And the evidence is there. You see the same thing. I'll say, Cedars of Lebanon State Park, you go walking, you find them everywhere. You find them everywhere. You find all of these trees that were cut at the stump, but they didn't die. So how old are they? It's these little tiny things you can find in the areas that haven't been touched, the land hasn't been raised, it hasn't been flattened. It's I will do a video. I'll do a follow up on that because I think it's pretty cool. I just like hugging trees, so.
That's okay. I've been accused of hugging a few trees myself. Actually, there is photo evidence of that. This area too is also known, and I wasn't really aware of just how intense. Like, I knew that there were things like heavy quartz, concentrations of quartz. In the LBL at one point, they used to mine hematite and iron and so forth. I wasn't aware until recently, like, how all of this area, Central East Tennessee, all of this area, is just a vast expanse of different types of moonstone as well. And celestite, which is connected to celestial realms and so forth. So there's a lot of minerals through this area as well. And I think we kind of discussed on the last episode, the last interview we did together, how this whole area is almost like one big battery in a sense of, with all the things, the waterways, the trees, the minerals, the life, the cryptids, all of that. And the cave systems. This is vast cave systems through here. Vast cave systems.
And imagine being so well connected with the natural sciences, and your knowledge is so well complete that you know the importance, the significance, right? I don't know, but I understand that it's important that there's quartz and minerals and all these things under the ground. I don't know why, but I understand it's important that there's cave systems. And, what did the prior civilizations know and understand? Why, what do other things know and understand? And you can go on, but you can say, if something had the need for these minerals and resources, if there was a draw for any reason, what would that be? What are the perplexities? What are the attributes of the moonstone? Like, and this is where I don't know anything. I don't know anything about rocks, geology, anything. I just know that different things have different charges, resonant frequencies, certain things react when you put them together, So how far does it go?
Right. And there's a certain, like, a lot of the minerals that I'm talking about and so forth, They do have metaphysical meaning. Different types of moonstone can be used for different things metaphysically, healing, otherwise, meditation, a lot of those sorts of things. Um, Celestite, like I said, is connected to the celestial realms and uh, is good for, among other things, communicating with angelic beings, um, entering the celestial realms and so forth during meditation and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff with that. And then, of course, quartz is just the king of all the uh, crystals. It does so many things, including being a component in watches and so forth like that. So there is a lot when it comes to those sorts of things. Um, I really want to, and one thing that we don't talk about very often, people aren't even aware of, in a sense, is at one time up until like 1950s, this area was home to the Great American Chestnut Tree, which became one of the largest ecological disasters of all times when a virus wiped out most of those trees. And now the Great American Chestnut can only be found in certain areas in New England and so forth. They're trying to make it virus resistant. They have not succeeded yet. But I mean, everything changed about the environment here. Uh, there were
Well,
species.
I would have one question about that with the American chestnut dying from
Mhm,
the virus, from the disease. Was that
mhm.
when was that? Was that after we came through and harvested the majority of the chestnuts? Did the disease just kill what was left? Because really things don't just get sick and die. There's usually other, comorbidities. There's reasons, if your trees are getting sick and dying, it's not because of the disease, really. It's because they don't have the safety net to bounce back, right? Your bees, your honeybees, everybody's like, oh, the bees are dying from diseases and viruses, and parasites, but also your bees are isolated in tiny little white boxes out in the middle of a field in the sun all day. So how healthy can they be? What what led to it? The American chestnut. We harvested that, right?
To a point, the chestnut really succumbed to a fungus. It wasn't a virus. Uh, it
Okay,
was
fungus.
inter
Yeah,
yeah, the fungus was introduced in 1904, and it killed nearly 4 billion trees by 1950.
introduced.
Yeah, it was. So basically what happened was, the chestnut tree was massive. I mean, we're talking about like redwoods massive. It was phenomenal. People used it to build furniture, to build their houses. The chestnuts were used to eat. The natives,
Were these the giant trees that lined the top of the Appalachians?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Now. Okay. Yes.
So there was I mean, and the wood literally lasted forever. I mean, it didn't rot. People used it in fires to heat their home because it lasted. It, as far as burning, it had burned for a long time. It burned hot, so it was just the survival of everything really depended on this wood and this tree at one point, its fruit and so forth. Uh, there were
And so
species.
just
Mhm.
to describe the scale, now that I know kind of what you're talking about, you said they were like the size of redwoods, right?
They were massive. They were very
So
massive.
these things line the top of the Appalachians, right? And I'm talking like towered, like massive, pillars of living trees, right?
Right. Let me see
And
if I can.
so it's like, here's where my mind goes with it, right? I love this. Electroculture gardening, the way it works is like you take a copper rod, you put it in the ground, and then that rod channels the residual static electricity in the air, and then it channels into the rod, which creates an electromagnetic field, which resonates at its own, frequency, whatever. But basically, you can take that same idea and apply it to trees because they do the same thing. So I really wonder when you have those massive trees like that, just to be under the aura of them, like what effects did they have? Every tree has its own little ecosystem that it itself provides stability for. Without the tree, you don't have the things in, around, or under the tree. So you say it's an ecological disaster. I believe so. Because, like, how do you get that back? You can't, you know?
Right. And I mean, there was like whole species of, I think there was like seven different species of animals and birds that uh, were taken out because of losing the trees. Several different types of plants no longer exist because of it. The composition of the soil from the leaves and so forth changed drastically. Like everything, the environment itself was so impacted by the loss of the trees
Mhm.
that it literally changed the face of Appalachia forever. And I think, when we talk about this area, when we talk about, you know, the especially the parts of Appalachia, parts of uh, central and east Tennessee that you kind of bring in that history, that vibrant history. I think it's very important for us to understand that not all of it was great. Losing these trees was not only a kind of a disaster for the ecology, but for the economy of the area as well. And
How much effect downstream is caused by something like that? Because you
right.
talk about the root system. I did a video, and I would love to do more. I'd love to see exactly what happened. We have a Japanese maple in our backyard, and if you know about trees and how the root system, the root span will mimic the canopy, right? This is
Mhm.
what happened to our great red oak that we had. A lot of times you'll have your oaks, their canopy will outgrow the span of the root system. It'll get top heavy and then it'll fall over. And that's because, balances of different nutrients, they get too much of one thing. But the point is like the soil and the grass, the flora underneath the Japanese maple tree is completely different from everything else in the yard. It's an actual literal border between grass and dead nettles and henbits and everything else that grows. So you have such an amazing creature is what it is. It's a giant tree. I wonder how far the roots went, and I really do want to know like what effects the Japanese maple has on our soil, what does it introduce? Does it fix the nitrogen? And then like the American chestnut, what was it that it really did and produced? How did it help the soil? What did we lose? What can you grow under the chestnut tree that you can't grow anywhere else? I mean, the Amazon is a food forest, all these massive trees. And what is a tree other than, it's a vertical, it there's just so much surface area. There's mushrooms, there's fruit, there's leaves, there's all kinds of things that you can get from these trees. There's so much wealth just in the trees, and it seems like the onslaught of capital greed, of course, seems to be the driving factor in a lot of these ecological disasters. Yes, I've seen this picture. I love this picture. How many people is that
Uh,
from left to right? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 shoulder widths.
yeah, yeah, they were massive. And
People lived in the stumps. They hollowed out the stumps and lived in them like houses.
right, right. That was one of the things that you, I mean, not only that, but they build they built homes, they built furniture, they built so very many things with them. They used uh, different parts of the tree for you know, just all kinds of things that we could not even imagine now.
So, like, to break it down simply, your culinary, what can you eat? Your medicinal, well, how does it help sicknesses? And your textile, what can you make out of it? I like to split most things into that, whether you're talking about, cannabis, hemp plants, the textile use of that, the founding documents on hemp paper, the textile use of what was the use? What did we really do? Like, did we just turn them all into furniture and chairs and tables? Like, where did it go? Where did it all go? That's what I want to know.
Right, right. And it would be great to, to go back and do research to see um, where, what exactly people were doing, what really for the economy, how is this tree used? How is its fruit used? I'm sure there's so very many things that we can even imagine. Was it was how did it work for ice boxes, for instance, which was uh, the predecessor to the refrigerator? If it was as durable of a wood as it was, and so forth, did it help hold in cold more and keep out some of the less attractive things and help to preserve the food better? I mean, what were the things that, in the end, uh, we lost of great value because of that one thing? But you again, when we come to this area, that's just one aspect of our history, a massive aspect of our history. And again, when we talk about ecological disasters, especially, in the day and age we live in, we don't even think about that part of history any longer. I mean, the last trees that were really still living in Appalachia, especially down this way, were in the 1950s. So that's like ancient history now compared to,
1950s,
yeah,
my
yeah,
favorite
okay,
decade.
right. Um, but I think it's very important for us to understand that, like, when it comes to, again, even the areas like where you were at today, very impactful to the area, and the energy of those areas is still very impactful to the area. Kind of walk us through what that area that you were visiting today is about.
So it's downstream from where the Sellers Mounds are, the state
Mhm,
archaeological site, where they had a township at least. The natives, they
mhm,
when you walk into the park and you start at the entrance, they have a little display board. It's nice. It's nice to read, get the knowledge, but they just portray them, they illustrate them as, just naked, wearing the least amount of clothing possible, and they're working. How advanced were they? And how advanced can you be? How advanced can you be
right,
if you don't have steel or iron? How advanced can you be? How far down a different technological path can you go? It's like you find a lot of interesting things. You find a lot of interesting rocks. You
mhm.
find a lot of interesting just things that look like, well, it looks like somebody could have made that hole in that rock or not. I don't know, right? Like I found this rock today, tied a little string around it. We'll see here. I
Oh,
found
wow,
this
yeah,
today.
a fairy stone.
Right, and people have different names for them. Fairy stones,
Hagstones.
squatch rocks, like you
Well,
know, hag stones, and
Stone too. Which I
but I
could
wonder how, did water do that? Did the water erode that, or was that done intentionally, or did water erode it with intention? When you're talking about people who lived every day and their materials around them are what they had, you know, it's just You don't know. You don't know until you go out and you find something really cool. Until you find something that sparks your imagination, that shows you something that you've never seen before and you never thought about, right? Like, I guess that'd be the perfect segue to like show off our little our tool here, right? And this is kind of what I'm going towards. This is actually, Google identified it as a water-worn hip bone, which I thought it was interesting that Google itself described it as water-worn. But as when I picked it up, I found it underneath some roots in a washout area of this creek, right? And this creek, like I said, is right downstream from this archaeological site where we know all these people lived. They had to work with what they had, and bone lasts forever. Bone lasts for a long time. There's no telling how old this piece really is. Somebody in the 50s could have gone out there and just had a day, but where did they get the bone? Did they use it? I'll see if I can, I don't know how well I can show it off on the stream here for anybody who's watching. I will point out a few key details. If you want to follow my social media, there's a better clip, a better page where I show it off. But you can see here on the one end, it has been worn down, sharpened, and it has dulled over time. You can tell it's been in the water for a long time. You can see algae still residually in the pores. But you can see how this would be used, held in the hand like so naturally, and used to cut meat after a kill. Someone took time to whittle this down. If you can see, I'll catch it in the light, you should be able to see the wear marks, the vertical lines that show where somebody at some point sat down, probably took a rock, another bone, a smooth stone. I picked this one. I picked this stone. I picked this. So, like, it's in my pocket, of course. Someone sat down and took time to develop this tool, out of necessity, of course, right? But how much time had passed, and how many of these did they make? How many of these are there out there? I found this in a stream in a washout area under the roots. You best believe as soon as I found that, I started looking under the trees. I'm like, I wonder what's buried under the trees,
Right.
But something like this isn't something you're going to find in a parking lot. Obviously, you're not going to find it out in town. You're not going to go to your local park where everybody is already at, and you're not going to find something like this generally. But if you know just the area, if you know a little bit of history, if you know that you're in an area that no one else has been to for a while, you might find something pretty cool, right? So again, going back to this was actually right next to the tree I talked about, by the way. The giant tree that spikes out in 3 forks and might be 1,000 years old, 10,000, I don't know. I found this right over there next to it. That's how, part of my honest sadness and depression is with how everything has been sanitized. But it doesn't matter because I still continue to find these little pockets. It could literally be 100 foot, it could be a football sized field area of just trees that have not been touched next to the creek. And the amount of diversity and things that you can find if you just take the time to look, it's all there. It's fascinating, and it doesn't have to be. This is kind of what I was talking about when we opened up. If you go out with an open mind and you sort of, in a sense, become receptive to your surroundings, then your surroundings will sort of, in a way, come to you. This is my experience. I didn't look for this. It just popped up. And then I was looking around and I found this little rock and that popped up, I'll be honest, I hugged a tree. I think that's what it was. I hugged a tree and then I found this, so, but it's the density. It is the density of the populations and the urban sprawling and the just march of progress that continues to trample over the old world, that continues to cover up what knowledge has been left behind. And it's becomes, at the end of the day, no one can do anything about it. You can scream all you want. At the end of the day, unless you go out and just do what you want, just go frolic. Just go do nothing. Go do nothing. I sat by a creek today and did nothing and had found an archaeological find. I think that's the correct terminology. I don't know. I'm very uninformed. But I would love to see, I would love to know if there are any experts. I'm not a bone expert. I'd love to know what hip bone this is, what animal it belonged to. I don't think it shows up so well in the lighting. I don't know if this is stained blood in the pores, because there is a red hue, there's a red tint to it. And I was thinking, if you're cutting into meat, you're obviously, the bones are porous. They're going to soak that up. So I don't know. I'd love to find someone who would, you know, take a look at it and maybe legitimize it. And I could show them where I found it as well, you know. But at the end of the day, like I said, somebody last year could have gone out there and just had a heyday, you know. Somebody could have made that. Somebody could have made that 10 years ago, 100 years ago. You don't know. So I think that's just an example of the importance of just becoming a part of it. You know, it's not a march. It's not a cause, you know. We still all have lives. We have to live. We have to eat. We have to have jobs and work. But if you can get out there every once in a while, you might find something pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Right, right, definitely. Hive Psi asked, did you consider taking it to the local university or perhaps an indigenous group?
I haven't. I just found it, and you know, I got home 30 minutes before we got on here. I could, I could go. I could reach out to Cumberland University. I think that would be an absolute awesome idea. Actually,
Tennessee Tech, that's a group.
Tennessee Tech would like it. Sure. I don't know. I think I would start with. I don't know what programs they have. I'm sure somebody knows if somebody's watching. If somebody has any knowledge.
Bruce is taking things up there at Tennessee Tech.
Does he? Where does he go?
Well, he takes.
Well, tell me. Oh, the first thing I thought when I found this was, you know, Indiana Jones. This belongs in a museum. But then I was like, the museums don't even show you the cool stuff, right?
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
how much
Yeah.
is out there, and what
Yeah,
can you do?
it's actually questionable what the museums do with a lot of things anymore.
I think that's the argument for individual speculation, for allowing your imagination to run, right? Because I mean, I believe nothing's outside the realm of possibility, right? You're a part of this universe. There's no way you can imagine something that can't exist, right? Or you can see something like this and you can imagine everything that ever happened with it. What does it mean? You had a hunter-gatherer society. You had sophistication. You had intelligence. You had enough of a need to feed yourself and others. They weren't just agricultural. They didn't just grow crops. They more, in a sense, lived off the land. They lived in and with and around the trees.
Right.
You know, you go out to the cedars, you find mushrooms, elephant's feet that grow on the trees. You can turn those. That's good kindling. You know, who knows that? These people had a completely different understanding, but were just as smart as you and I are. And I think that's
Right.
kind of where I was going with the point of like the illustration of like everybody's just in skin and rags and they're building stockades. They're literally building stockades out of trees, walls, but they're naked and they got a stick with a rock on it. I think it's just a complete misrepresentation of who the people were who were here before us, you know.
Right, right. Kind of like the Pecs. Talking about a misrepresentation. So I do want to say to you guys, though, that are watching right now, like 65% of you guys that have been watching lately are not subscribed. So hit that subscribe button and keep up with what's going on with the show, because we are moving forward with some really great stuff coming up. You don't want to miss it. Let's talk for a minute again about, because at the top of the show, I mentioned a fisherman near the Oak Ridge area who had an encounter of some sort, and uh, the result of that encounter changed his world quite a bit. This happened in 1981, and over near Oak Ridge, over in around the Clinch River area. If you guys are familiar with that, when you're going from Harriman toward toward what is it, Knoxville area, you pass over this river that's got this weird coal factory kind of electrical thing going on there in the area, and that is Clinch River, and that's the area that we're talking about. um the story goes that this guy apparently was abducted by what what they believe was a UFO, and this story has kind of become part of the hidden Appalachian folklore. It's sometimes confused with the 1973 Pascagoula, Mississippi abduction, which we have talked about with Dr. Irina Scott before on here, and I will be talking about in future episodes as well. So again, when it comes to these areas through here, lots of history, lots of strangeness, lots of high strangeness. That abduction was definitely uh, one of the things that kind of set the tone for high strangeness. Um, Going back to the area that you're talking about, though, with the archaeological discoveries that are going on there, and I'm sure there's so many things that we're not being told that they're finding there that are probably absolute treasures. Uh, what is your sense of the area when you walk through there? What kind of vibe does that area have for you?
Well, I mean, I can speak experientially on this, but then we're going to circle back around to the abduction. There's no way we're going to gloss over this man getting abducted by an alien.
Right, right.
But because that's yeah, I haven't heard many of those stories firsthand. I think it's always interesting, but no. So just bringing it full circle, speaking holistically, right? And you go out somewhere, and you become acclimated. You fall into the sort of rhythm and frequency of your surroundings, your trees. You spend a long enough time out there, and you get still. Then the frogs start chirping. Everything gets used to you. And then you find stuff, and you can find stuff just by being out there. You don't have to look for it. It'll just pop up. It's just a part. It's almost like your third eye's looking for you. You don't have to do so much of the work. But when you're talking about experiencing feelings and sensations, and we talked about everybody's had that feeling in the woods where everything gets quiet and you're just like, no, I probably don't need to be here anymore. I experienced feelings when I picked up this piece because, like I said, at first it fell into my hands naturally and I just held it. And I instantaneously in my mind, I was like, I know what that's for. And then I said, haha, that's funny if that would be. Well, it is. So that was like my mind, my ego checking. I had to analyze and check it and make sure that it actually is an actual find. But I just, I, I would like to say that I could almost feel the residual energy of who held this before. If I just sit and open my mind and, in a sense, channel, you know, what is your imagination and what is it telling you? And what can you direct your imagination? Can you let it do its job? Can you let it do the work? If if I sit and I hold this, do I really experience feelings? Yes, I did today. I felt presence. I felt, again, talked about this about my last experience out there. I felt a sense of community. I almost felt a sense of, hey, you found it. And I had my own personal feeling of that, but then there were other residual feelings I was getting. Like there's internally produced feelings, and then there's externally produced feelings. And that's what I was experiencing today. And I would like to know, I would like to think that I am in some way experienced and connected with the warrior, not to be so cringe and corny, but really like the actual hunter, the gatherer, the provider, the father, the protector, the one who actually made this. I don't think anything is disconnected. I think if you allow yourself to connect, you will, because you're an
Right.
antenna, right? We're jelly. We're just jelly molds walking around. We listen to vibrations. You listen to the right song, you get chills, you get a physical reaction. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not acting on you, And so you really do. I don't know how much more to go on that. It's just, there's so much you can say. Just go out and experience it, become a part of it. Like, let yourself, and then see what you can find.
Right, right. And I think that's really important. Like when we go out into these areas, to keep an open mind, keep your eyes open, and be aware of, what's around you, because you can find some pretty spectacular stuff that way. Um, and again, in an area that's so heavy with minerals and so forth, um, it's always a good idea to keep your eyes open anyway, because you never know what kind of gems you're going to find out there.
What is it? What is it particularly that takes you down the minerals rabbit hole? The gems, the minerals, the moonstone.
Well, I work with different stones for one thing, and by working with them, I mean I do meditation and healing and so forth with them, and use them in, I guess, what you would refer to as metaphysical ways. Um, for instance, like the smoky quartz, which I keep on my desk, is very cleansing. It helps to draw out all the negative energies and so forth. And as you can tell, and you may imagine, whenever you're working on a podcast, there can be a lot of negative energies thrown at you at times. Um, Same thing
You'd be
with
surprised what people can do with just intention
oh yeah,
from the
yeah,
couch.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's the same thing with the black obsidian, another one that's kind of a protection stone. My tiger's eye, which is really good for manifestation and good fortune. There's a lot of different, my shundite, which you'll see me, if you ever notice sometimes whenever I'm like doing an interview, especially early on when I was doing interviews, if I wasn't very comfortable, I'd be clenching this with like white knuckling the sucker. So the shundite, if you see me like fidgeting with it a lot, it probably means I'm not in a very comfortable space at that moment with the interview or the interviewee or the subject matter. Um, so and I have like literally this whole room is surrounded by different crystals and minerals. Charlite, celestite, I mean, just you name it, it's in here. And I keep it all throughout my house, actually, for various reasons. Mostly the vibrational levels really help with anxiety and so forth like that too, which I do have a lot of anxiety. And so I tend to keep a lot of stones around to help with those vibrational levels as well. So yeah,
So, I
it's
mean,
a thing.
first, it is what you are intent on, what you believe. You know, there is the argument for the placebo effect, but casting all casting all, arguments against aside, there is factual evidence that everything vibrates. That's
Right.
basic physics. Everything vibrates. I'm trying to think. There's something you can do with crystals to make them glow, and I know I sound crazy without any like credible like evidence, but I'll find it. I'll go down. I'll find it. The point is, you get reactions out of different stones. You feel the resonance, and why not? Why not? If you're sensitive and you're open and you want to, now can you manifest a belief? Sure, but can you also receive what's actually there? Yes, you can. Can you pour your intention into something that you're holding? Yes, I believe you absolutely can. I'm not to get too esoteric here. I'm sure some people may argue, but I believe there was a practice by Jesus where he would speak into a glass, and with intention he would say I am, and he would speak into his food. And that's, again, where you're praying over your food, you're putting your intention into the food. You're sort of like prepping yourself, right? So I think you have what you have is you have a bunch of physical specimens. You have stones, and you have, you'll swear by the effects. Sure.
Mhm.
I'm sure if someone else picked up the stone, they would swear by the effects. I swear by the effects that I felt picking up this little hatchet tool here. I do. But what I think, where it gets hard to talk about is I heard a good one. I read a good one the other day. I'm trying not to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of, we think they were too stupid to write it down literally, so they wrote it down symbolically. But when in reality, we're too stupid to take it literally, and they were smart enough to write it down symbolically,
Right.
in messages and in interpretations that would last over time. So when you get into talking about rocks, obviously you're talking about your astrological girls. There's a whole like, it's like my rock saved me. It's like, okay, go get a job. But at the same time, what does it all allude to? Everything's real. Everything is real, even the real fake stuff. But everything can be, the way things echo through time. Some of the most ridiculous explanations and stories for things are just the way that the information survived, that the truth survives. So I think what we have is the understanding without the knowledge. We understand the significance and the importance of course, anything around us, it's your first thought, it's your intuition. I pick up this rock is special. Why? There is something to it. It is a rock. Is it quartz? Did someone pour their intention to it? Is there any kind of resonant frequency that you can read off of it that you can sense? I think that's where you get into tripwire territory, because that's probably along the same lines of the thinkings of the people levels deep underground in some parts of the Tennessee state, around the Oaks. People who know and understand, and what people, just people like you and me, you know, they have a job with a high security clearance that they can't talk about anything, and it's their security, and they step outside and smoke a cigarette, and they're like, holy shit, can you believe this? Nah, man. Like, I think it's exciting though, because everything's coming out. People are talking about it. We're talking about it, and it's the free exchange of information and ideas that really leads to the ultimate conclusion. The general consensus. The moment you have any information that's being scorned, being cast out of the mainstream, you probably need to look at who's trying to stop it. You know what I mean? Because they probably know. I think there's a lot of evidence. There's enough evidence to say definitively that we come from whoever we come from. There was a cataclysmic event. We are a species with amnesia. And it's almost like we're not learning, we're just remembering. It's on, what do we got? It's almost like
What were you
Mm.
what are you looking at?
She was showing me something. I don't necessarily
Ah.
know how to go down that rabbit hole. Because well, okay, so my mother, we've collected rocks from the creek, and there's, I'm sure she could do her whole own episode on all the experiences, right? But it's like there have been people who have brought stuff home, relics. I didn't really pick up many souvenirs when I went around, Poland and found some old bunkers and trenches. I went through Auschwitz and saw really old
Yeah.
history, but also understood that you don't want to bring anything with you. There's I mean, what's that movie? The the preacher, he's got the room and he's got the doll, the Madeline doll, and it's not the
Mm.
Exorcist, it's the other one.
It's not bad.
Oh, God, I can't even
It's the
remember.
husband and wife, and they're like they go to people's houses, and
Are you talking about
Talking about
it's based on the real couple, the
are
real
you talking
doll,
about the oh my gosh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I just had
Rain.
this
right?
conversation
Right?
the other day because I was talking. I know their grandson,
The
and he and I
Warren.
Really?
was having the
Yeah, the
Warrens. Yes,
Warrens.
You
the
talking about the Warrens? Yeah.
yes,
You see how trying to think of it is getting in the way of actually, like, if we just go on, it'll pop up, right? That's the whole thing. If you go out, try to look for stuff, you're going to miss it every time.
I
yeah.
love
You're
You
it.
talking
know,
about the Conjuring series.
the
Yeah.
Conjuring series. Yes, I was wanting to go Insidious or something like in the Conjuring. Yes, the Conjuring series. So like their whole thing was based off the real story of this real couple, and they got a room full of like real residual stuff, real bad energies. What do you think the Vatican's full of? Other than reptiles, it's got how many relics over time? Just who knows? Who knows?
Y'all used
Zach
to cover
Bagan's
my dolls up
museum.
all the time. Man.
Hmm?
Y'all used to cover my dolls up all the time. Man.
We did. We did. We used to have dolls. We used to
But
cover up the dolls, but I think that's just because more of the fact that the dolls were terrifying. And also, she would open her eyes sometimes, and I didn't. I would not. I was not messing with that.
Right. And for those of you who are interested in talking about Robert the Doll, there is an episode that I did with the guy who is the caretaker of Robert the Doll. You can go and find that in one of the playlists, actually, I believe. I'll have
you'll
to put
have
that
to
playlist up.
explain a little more.
And we will have him back on too coming up later this year because he does some very interesting work there in Miami and the Keys, Florida Keys areas. So yes, Robert the Doll is definitely one of those things that that we
What's
have
his
touched
name?
on at least once here.
Just Robert, it's how you know it's real because it's not like Vortex, the evil one. No, it's Robert the doll.
He's for real. But they've had Robert the doll is inhabited. Okay.
They actually believe that Robert is a portal,
Yeah.
that he that several different things manifest through Robert. So
Now, I mean, so like, if you can do that with a doll, what can you do with an intelligent being that has the ability to channel basically anything you want? Like, look at me, I read the Bible. How many people go to Israel and then they look around and then they're like, wow, this isn't anything like I thought it would be. This is the same kind of, like, this looks exactly like everywhere else. And then, oh, sorry, it's my dog stacking the wood for me. We don't have sticks in the yard. He just mulches them up. He eats them. No, but people, they go to Israel and then they find out it's not what they thought, and then they go through a psychosis, and then next thing you know, they're standing on a street corner, wearing the white getup, preaching the gospels, right? So if I want
exactly.
if I want to read like Miyamoto Musashi and get really, really, really into Japanese culture and anime and be a weeaboo, I can do that too, you know? Are you channeling yourself? Are you channeling something else? Is there another entity? Is there a mindset? Is it a parasite? Is it a psychology? You know, when you pick up your rocks when you pick up something with the intention, do you return to yourself? That helps you return to your baseline, right? You said you get really stressed out. I think something like Robert the Doll doesn't have a choice of what possesses it. I think you do. I think you do, and I think that's the battle of the mind, the power over the mind. Didn't mean to get so off in the weeds on that one, but I just really do, because like you talk about Robert the Doll, like Robert's cool. I'd probably hang out with Robert the Doll. I don't want to go to Walmart and hang out with some of the people. I'm like, what are you possessed by? How many? Like, I'm. You just look at some people and you're like, how many am I talking to right now?
Right. Right. That's the thing. It's like, yeah, we got a few people. It's like right now my numbers say 9, but I feel like there's more than that watching actually. Some of them are watching from the outside. I don't know what this. Okay, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. Link tree. Okay, I forgot about that. Let's because there's a lot that can be said about haunted objects. Like Zach Bagans has his thing going on. I've had a guy from TikTok who sells haunted objects come on the show and talk about those. That again is another episode. If you guys want to check it out, it should be down in the same playlist with Robert the Doll. Actually, um, the incident that I was talking about earlier in on Clinch River that you said you wanted to go back to and talk about for a moment.
So where is that? Clinch River?
Clinch River is right like after you get out of Harriman going toward like an Oak Ridge, you pass Oak Ridge up. It's actually on the outskirts of Oak Ridge. Um, there's a bridge going toward Knoxville that you go over, and there's a river there, and that's Clinch River. Right off to the side is a uh, area with huge smokestacks and a ginormous amount of coal and so forth. It's an energy plant there. That is the area that is around the area that this happened at, and apparently it happened in 1981. It involved a man who was fishing alone, and the uh, kind of took places like around the government facilities there in the area. So this is always anytime anything like that happens in those areas, especially around what is it, Y12, that area.
So the
Usually,
fact that it happens next to the military installation,
mhm,
and this is in the 80s,
mhm.
this tells me a couple of the Joes probably did a line in the bathroom and said, let's take the spaceship out and go pick up some poor jockey off the side. You know, I wouldn't say that's aliens. I just think you might have some people who have technology, you know, and it could be aliens, but I think what is the more point is he was picked up. Yes. True, right. According to the story, by something, by what? How was he picked up? Was he tractor beamed, you know?
Right, right. Which it doesn't go into that, obviously. Um, but it's definitely quite a bit of folklore about it. I mean, Spooky Appalachia a has a whole thing on it. Um, if you go to their website, um, they have a pretty good. Oh wow, they have a whole video on it, uh, linked from their YouTube. So Spooky Appalachia is a really good source for finding out about the story. Um, and Yeah, it kind of again, it was on the parameter of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory there. To be honest with you, a lot of times with abductions and so forth, there's a large amount of information out there about people who recognize military um, officers and people from different branches of the military on board some of the craft that they are taken on to. So there's a lot of speculation that it is a government type thing. And, I'm not really here one way or the other to propagate one belief or the other. But one thing I will say is um, you, going back as far as the Betty and Barney case, which was one of the first uh, recorded abductions.
That's one
There's
of the first like nationally known, I'd
yeah,
say like culturally accepted. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think with that, going back to that experience and up to current day, I mean, the Pascagoula abduction was quite an experience. There was actually possibly two or three more other people who were abducted the night of the Pascagoula incident. Dr. Irina Scott talks about that in the interview I did with her and in the books that she's written on the subject. And there were hundreds of people who witnessed that, um, witnessed sightings that night. And in that event, too, there was a loud sonic boom type thing that happened uh, that was heard all the way into Ohio and across a good portion of the country. And we're talking about an event that happened in Mississippi. So, um, the thing is with when it comes to the abductions, uh, there's again a lot of speculation that military is involved with it, that is part of some kind of psyops or something or whatever. And that's very possible. I do know that in a lot of cases, I've worked with a couple of cases with a past life regressionist named Robin Quayle, who was involved with the Bill Cooper group, if you're familiar with them. And and some of those things that we talked about, some of those experiences that I helped her with, um, it was pretty intense stuff. I mean, people were having some really traumatic. Ooh, I just moved the whole desk. Some very traumatic memories associated with those experiences. So whatever's happening there, I think is very real for those people that are experiencing it. Uh, and of course, when you get into again talking about Tennessee and disappearances and so forth, I can't help but go back to the immense cave system that runs around Tennessee, Kentucky. The Mammoth Cave area is, just, I mean, they call it Mammoth Cave for a reason. I mean, all of these cave systems through here are very well known, and it's speculated in a lot of cases where, like, they say that if you put a map of missing persons, 411 cases, over the cave system, it's very interesting how they kind of mesh together in a way where you see a lot of connection between the two.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If the military was involved, you would absolutely know about it. So if there's anything that is going on, it's certainly not government. It's most definitely agency. It's probably not even named. And you talk about the extensive cave system, it's almost, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And you can see evidence of civilizations and people reaching certain levels of technology and sophistication. At some point, if people sit around long enough, they say, "Hey, where's the water at?" And then they dig down. And you see this. We have a well. We dug down to the water level. We have a well. The pyramids of Giza have been confirmed to have massive structures, pillars. Nobody knows what they are, but they go down to the water level. And again, you have these massive cave systems that you can find the water tables in these cave systems. But I wonder how far down it goes. I wonder how far down people have gone. What can you see with scans? If you can if you can see the inside of a house just because of Wi-Fi, right? It's literal bat signal. It's the most hilarious joke ever that they exposed the Batman movie, where he like hacks into the city's Wi-Fi and he has like the 3D guy and he can see through walls. That's real. It's echolocation, and you can do that. They can see your whole house through the Wi-Fi, right? I almost forgot where I was going with this. I did forget where I was going with this. Getting back on the water tables, right?
Right.
I just you're talking about fucking. I did forget where I was going with that. Almost got off. I do this. Because I'll get to talking about the Wi-Fi, and there's a whole lot more to that, and it's like I don't know. It's like, what did they know? What? Who knows what? I want to know what's down there in the cave systems and the water tables. You have, you've heard stories of the massive cave systems in China, and
Right.
you have all of the underground civilizations that continue the stuff that you don't even know. That I know I keep saying that, but the stuff that doesn't get portrayed in the media, I would say. They
Mhm.
call it alternative history or alternative. Well, it's just what it is. They're finding entire, not catacombs, entire cities underground that were lived in with advanced understanding of how air flows, much like how ants do in the soil. I wonder, you had people who were sophisticated enough to build stockades and walls and mound up the dirt, and you have people who made a snake, down in the Mississippi. What happens when they dig down? I wonder if there is anything that was ever found. Was there any cave systems that were occupied and traveled into? Who knows? I'm just going fully off of complete speculation here. That would be cool. That would be cool if, in my imagination, they might have found something built off in the mountains of Tennessee and they said, "Hey, let's build a base here." You know, how many of our facilities that we have, how many of our buildings did we find, or how many were built? How many we're obviously living within the blueprint of people before us, as evidenced by this little hunter's tool right here.
Right.
So
Right.
it doesn't repeat itself. It rhymes.
Exactly. Eh, So let me ask you this, because I know we've covered a lot of different things and kind of gone all over the place tonight in a way, but that is kind of how talking about high strangeness in Tennessee rolls a lot of times. What are your thoughts about all of the reports of UFOs, cryptids, the paranormal in these areas? Because I know, like, the area where you live at is really um, dense energy through there of high strangeness. What's your
Populated, yeah.
yeah? What's your thoughts about these things?
Well, generally, I try not to think about it
Probably
because
best.
I can I can kind of fall back on the same fundamentals
Mhm.
in saying that you can get lost in the chase, you can get lost in the knowledge, you can get lost in the forest for the trees. But if you just take it all as an observation. At the
Mhm.
most extreme point, you're observing yourself having this experience. And if information comes to you that doesn't align with something you might believe, makes you uncomfortable, well, then it might be touching on something. I have a good friend. I'm not calling him out, but I have a good friend of mine. He'll talk about everything all day. He believes everything that's going on nowadays. He knows about he knows about what's going on in the upper echelons and out in the oceans and upper tiers and why we have forces overseas and where the dollar goes. But he still does not believe 9/11 was an inside job. So I don't want to get too tactful, I don't want to hit any tripwires. But it's like we form these mental constructs that protect us because it's safe. We live in our boxes, we do live in our pocket dimensions.
Mhm.
What is a dimension? It's that, right? So your office buildings are pocket dimensions. How a lot goes on in those pocket dimensions. If you're living in your own little room in your own little pocket dimension, how much are you actually experiencing out there? And how much of it is actual just refuse, just absolute, just not even real? How much of it is AI nowadays? How much of it is somebody making something up? How much of it is just a distortion of the truth?
Right.
You can I've seen some lights in the sky. I full well heartily believe that they were drones. That's the most logical explanation. But I've been wrong before. So I keep the open mind to it. I keep the open mind. It's Andrew Huberman. If I can, Andrew Huberman, I love Andrew Huberman. If you don't know him, follow his podcast. He's a very wonderful professor with Stanford University. He does his podcast on all things neurology, neurobiology, psychology, and he goes everywhere with it. I've learned so many things, right? But he said one thing in particular, I'll condense it. He said that it's not just what you know, it's what you know you know. There's
Hmm.
levels, you know.
Right.
And then of course, dyadically speaking, the flip side of the coin, there's what you don't know, and what you know you don't know, what you don't know you don't know,
Mhm.
and what you don't know you already know. We could play the word games all day, but I think that's really just keep an open mind to it. But don't get lost in the game. Don't get lost in the chase. We're all trying to live a life. You got to live, eat, and breathe, and go frolic. You got to go frolic. You got to
Right.
have some new time. Go sit by a creek. You might find something.
Right. Definitely. Definitely so. And that's one of the things that, like, I try to keep an open mind about the area that I live in, the space around me. Obviously, you don't want to get too esoteric about everything, but to me, I think it's very fascinating that there's so many people, so many experiencers with so many different types of experiences that are coming forward, talking about it openly, sharing their stories not only on my podcast but other people's podcast. And you, the at the end of the day, when we talk about high strangeness, when we talk about the locations of high strangeness and what it could mean, what it does mean, what the outcome is for people from time to time in those places, I think it's very important for us to uh, approach it. I try to approach it from a semi-scientific mind and want to collect data, want to collect the evidence to see what is happening, what's manifesting in those areas, temperature changes, electrical changes, what's the EMF baselines, all those kind of fun stuff. I like finding out those things, especially when it comes to the areas of high strangeness. Uh, at the end of the
Love
day,
that
though,
terminology, by the way.
high
The high
strangeness.
strangeness. Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, and actually, to be honest with you, when it was first being used, I forget who actually coined the phrase for the first time. I don't think it was John Kill. It was one of the other early researchers. If any of you guys know who it is, leave me a comment below to tell me who it was who coined the phrase for the first time. But high strangeness was actually a term used in ufology in the early days because uh, just a regular sighting. Oh, I saw that, this and that, and it was just, kind of mundane facts. Was not valued as as strongly as, I saw this, then this happened, then the craft landed, and then these things came out of the craft, and then this and this and this happened. And the more bizarre the story, the more high strangeness attached to the sighting, the more relevant it seemed to be for the researchers and the investigators at the time. So originally, that's what it was. It was coined as was a phrase used in ufology for the really freaky experiences with UFOs. And now, of course, we use it for these sorts of things. So yeah, it is a pretty cool term. I've always enjoyed it. Um, I'm working on a book about high strangeness. If I ever get the opportunity to work on it again, and there's a lot of focus on that in past episodes and in future episodes coming up. So uh, again, you guys make sure you're following, make sure you're doing all the things. Go on Facebook group to find out what's going on with future episodes because you don't want to miss out. Um, as we're heading into that almost hour and 30. Wow, tonight. As we're wrapping up the night, Michael, what is something, a piece of insight, a piece of wisdom that you would like to leave us with tonight regarding all of this?
Well, I think you kind of gave the example. I found that I didn't know that about high strangeness, that terminology. I like words. I'll pick up a book. Everybody should have a pocket dictionary, right? Because
Right.
you're the vocalization, talking about it, spreading the ideas. You have to know what you're talking about. But
Mhm.
just following that example, the term high strangeness, just the history of the word alone, I didn't know where it came from, where it was coined. And if you follow the high strangeness, well, then that's what you get. You kind of learn the history. That's how you get into the world. So I think, I think it is just be careful what you say, but also like, again, educate yourself, learn things, keep a little pocket dictionary, find out what these, because the hardest thing about talking about this stuff is when you're alluding to things that have deeper meaning, and you can go off on a
Right.
whole nother podcast about, oh, well, here's why this is why it is. So I don't know. It's just individual responsibility. Do your homework, do your research.
Right. Do all the things and cover your bases and know stuff. That's really important. Well, I definitely appreciate you joining me again tonight and talking about this. I mean, we could go on for a long time talking about all of the things related to this area, to our experiences in this area, and all the things attached to the area. There's so many stories. And so much history here. Like I said, we've talked about the history. There's over by you. There's the archaeological areas. Right down the street from me is a huge battleground. Uh,
It's
it's
right under
just
your feet, right
so
in your
right,
yard too.
literally. So it's definitely um, it's definitely one of those things that we could definitely have many conversations on over time. So I thank you for joining me tonight. I'm going to go on and close us out for the night, but thank you once again. And I will get your links. Send me your links again. And I will get those up in the description again, because
Okay.
I kind of did this real quickly tonight, trying to get the show set up since we had the cancellation for the
No, I
for the
appreciate you
original.
having me on. You know, it was let me know this morning. I was like, absolutely, you know, I'll hop on anytime, you know.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And you have a great night. And I'll talk with you again soon.
You too, bro.
All right, guys. So East Tennessee, West Tennessee, Central Tennessee, it gets crazy here. It gets real crazy here. As we're closing out the night, just remember to keep your eyes on the tree lines, and may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our past lives.
And